My name is Kyra Proft. I'm telling the story today about how when I was 12, I met an online predator who groomed me and blackmailed me for 6 months. Growing up, I grew up in a slightly conservative household. My parents really sheltered me from a lot of the world. I was interested in boys and girls from the time I was really young. I think my first boyfriend was in the fourth grade. And around the time I was 12, I started getting more interested in relationships and trying to find a boyfriend. My parents had gotten divorced the year prior, and I was having a bit of a hard time dealing with that. So I think I was around 11 when the internet started becoming a really big thing for everybody. And I remember when my parents split, my mom refused to have the internet at her place. So I begged my dad to have internet at his house and to get me my own computer and a web camera so I could chat with my friends, because online chatting was becoming more and more prominent. And I just used the internet for everything. When I first started using the internet, it was just primarily to talk with my friends. We used MSN chat to webcam with each other, to chat IM with each other. I didn't really talk to anybody outside of it because I had heard warnings about people who could be on the internet and the kind of signs to look out for. So I was very hesitant to talk to anybody that I didn't know. When I was in grade 8, around 12 years old, I transferred into a new school to be with my best friend from kindergarten. And she actually introduced me to a boy who lived in Texas, and he was 16. He had dated a girl in my class, so I felt like he was very safe because she had dated him for well over a year. And we slowly started chatting with each other because he was just really friendly and he made me feel really nice. He always complimented me, always told me I was so pretty and that I was so nice, and he loved chatting with me. And it really gave me a sense of security and love that I wasn't feeling after my parents got divorced. So when I started talking to this boy on the internet, we were just friends. Like, it started off as a friendship where we would just chat every day. How was your day? How was school? Oh, it was good. And he would tell me, oh, you look so pretty today. I saw your new picture on Nexopia or MSN. And I started to feel really comfortable with him. And I started to feel just really safe, and like I didn't have to be as afraid as people had made the internet sound so scary. And after talking to him for about 2 months, I had kind of forgotten about all of those warnings, all of those red flags to look out for, because I was just happy to have a boy who was interested in me and liked me. He had Nexopia Plus, which was a really big deal when we were young. He always changed his pictures, so all those warning signs that I was taught weren't really there. His picture changed consistently. He had dated someone in my school. No one had ever seen him on web camera though, but he had said that he was just very nervous to be on web camera because he was self-conscious. And I got that. When we were teenagers, we were all self-conscious. It was about 2 months in that it slowly started to change. He started asking to see me on web camera more, to video chat. And one night in particular, he asked me to flash him. And I decided to do it because I didn't want to lose this connection I had with someone. I thought he was going to get upset, that he was going to stop talking to me, that I would lose this friendship and this interest that I had in me. So I decided to do it. And I remember right when it happened, I asked him not to do anything with it, that it would just be very quick and that would be it. He said, okay, that I could trust him, that don't worry about it, like it's just between you and me. And the next morning when I woke up, I received a bunch of messages from him that contained screenshots of me and of me flashing him. And suddenly the situation became very real and very scary, where he told me that I now had to do whatever he said, or he would distribute the pictures to everyone on my Nexopia list that he had copied and kept into a file on the side. And my world that day crashed around me. And I remember thinking about what people had warned me about on the internet, and that this was real, this was happening, and it was happening to me, something I thought would never happen to me because it seemed like such a rare chance at the time. And I didn't tell anyone about it. I decided to just try to deal with it on my own because I felt very ashamed that I had agreed to flash him that day on camera. I was very embarrassed, and I was terrified of people in my class, my peers, my parents, my teachers finding out about it. And because he was 16 and I was 12, For some reason, I minimized it in my head. I told myself that it wasn't as bad as it could be. So I agreed to just do whatever he said for the next 6 months to avoid those pictures getting out to anybody. When it first happened, I did ask him why he was doing this to me. He didn't really give me much of an answer. He just told me that this was how it was now, and that if I wanted to keep the pictures from going out and everyone finding out what I had done, then it was best to just do what he said. And the more I did what he said, he would delete the pictures one by one. Unfortunately, that proved to be untrue at the end, but 12 and naive. The first few times he asked me to do stuff for him, it was just flashing him. It was just showing him either my chest or my behind or whatever it had be. But as it progressed, he started asking me to do sexual acts on myself for him and performing these acts live on camera for him to see. And it varied for a bunch of different things over the next 6 months. And I was mortified. I was absolutely terrified of what was happening, but I was so determined to get these pictures erased that I blocked out everything else in my mind and just tried to get it done, to not think about it, to just pretend it wasn't happening. I had these small breaks from it whenever I was at my mom's house because she didn't have internet at her house. So those would be my periods to kind of shut down and try not to think about it, to get a bit of a break. But then every time I went back to my dad's, I'd get such anxiety because I knew what was going to be waiting for me there. I was really afraid of my mom at the time. We didn't get along very well because we were just very different. My mom was a bit of a control freak, and after everything started happening, I was seeking control anywhere else in my life because I felt so out of control being under this person's thumb. I thought about telling my parents a few times, but he had been very clear with me that my parents would disown me, that they would think I was disgusting, that I did this thing online, that they would take my computer away from me forever and I would never be allowed back on the internet or to talk to my friends again. And it was very real to me that that was a real possibility, that my parents were going to be just so ashamed that their daughter had engaged in these behaviors online, that I was mainly trying to shield myself, but I believe in a way, looking back now, I was also trying to shield them from the embarrassment, from the complete mortifying feeling I had. And he had told me as time went on that he had sent the pictures to his friends with instructions on what to do if he was ever caught. If the police ever came knocking on his door, he would make sure those pictures got out to everybody that I knew. I didn't like that I was in this situation where I was doing things that I had never wanted to do. I had always dreamed that I would first have these acts happen with somebody I loved and with somebody who was my partner and who treated me with respect and treated me the way I felt that I should be treated. And as time went on and he got more volatile and he got more scary, then I started kind of falling into myself. I describe it as I just kind of collapsed in on myself, doing anything I could to try to forget that this was happening, to try and just get through it as best if I can so I could put it behind me and just move forward from it. The first 2 months were just flashing on camera a few nights a week. And then by the third month, it started turning into performing sexual acts for him on camera. And that went on for at least 2 or 3 months until one day I, out of curiosity, just pressed the web camera chat button because it was supposed to load both cameras and I had never seen him on camera before. And so when I clicked the button, his camera automatically loaded. And that's when I saw that I was not talking to a 16-year-old in Texas. I was in fact talking to a 57-year-old man who was living in Texas. And it dramatically changed after that. I had thought I was in slight control of the situation because he was close to my age and he couldn't be planning something so diabolical, and that he was honestly deleting these pictures of me for every act, every flash that I did. And suddenly it became very real that this was a predator, that this was somebody who was grooming me, who was abusing me and exploiting me. And my world just completely fell apart. I couldn't believe that exactly what I had been warned about was happening to me. When I first saw him, for the first time, sitting in his chair, realizing how old he was. He wasn't on my MSN chat screen at the time. He was looking at something else off screen. And so he didn't see that I had seen right away. And I was so shocked. I was so confused that I didn't say anything. I closed right out of MSN and just cried. And it was about a day later where he reached out to me saying he knew that I saw. And at first he was very apologetic. He told me that he was sorry that he had done this, that he hadn't thought it through properly, and that he was ashamed of himself. And he really backtracked on everything. He told me he was going to leave me alone, that just not to tell anybody because, I would be in trouble, he would be in trouble. And I believed him. I believed that I would be in trouble too. And it wouldn't just be on him, that it would be on me because I was the one who said yes that first day. And slightly after that time, about 2 weeks later, me and my friends decided to write a PSA on Nexopia about predators on the internet and warning people that they were out there and that they were dangerous. And he saw this and he got very, very angry with me over it. He actually sent out the picture to a few people on my Nexopia friends list. I was lucky in the fact that they were my friends who received the pictures and they didn't do anything with these pictures, but it drastically changed after that. He started showing me plane tickets saying he was going to come down and he was going to kidnap me because he knew what school I went to, because he had dated a girl in my class. He knew exactly where it was. He knew what city I was in. He told me he would follow me after school and I wouldn't know when he was going to grab me. And he would tell me things like, your parents won't care, they'll give you to me willingly because of what you've done. And that's when he started asking me to do acts again. I did, because I didn't want it to escalate any further. I was very fearful for my life. I was fearful for my future. And it wasn't until I found out he was doing similar things to other girls that I gathered the courage to reach out to an adult and to try and stop what was happening. I met with Nexopia admin mods and we met at a little Tim Hortons. There was a bit of a conversation about who he was. I told them exactly what happened, how old he was, and that what had been happening over the last 6 months to me. And a police officer came and met us there and brought me to the station where they had actually pulled some of the pictures. I don't even know how they got them, but I remember them showing me the picture and asking me if that was me. And I was completely mortified to say that it was me and that, yes, I had done these things. And they told me that they were going to tell my parents because they had a right to know. And they advised me to try to find a way to stop talking to him, whether it be to just delete all my social media so he had no way to find me, and that he may put the pictures out, but it wasn't going to be the end of the world. They tried to really assure me that they were going to do everything in their power to make sure he was caught and those pictures would never surface. But it was scary because once something's on the internet, it doesn't go away. And I was so fearful of what to do that me and my friend ended up staging that I committed suicide. And we made a fake post about it that I had committed suicide and I was gone. And that was the only way he ended up leaving me alone. I was very diabolical with the police when they were trying to contact my parents. I would sit by the phone and screen all their calls. I was still so scared of my parents finding out what happened to me and that they were going to disown me and punish me. I was so scared of the punishment that was going to be coming my way that I didn't tell them for a really long time. It wasn't until I was 16 and they had made the arrest that they reached out to my mom by chance one day at her work and told her that they needed me to come and testify and give a victim statement letter because he was refusing to plead guilty to exploitation. And that was the day that both my parents ended up finding out what happened to me. My parents had very different reactions. My mom was the first one to find out. And I remember being so scared when she called me that day crying. And all she said to me at first was that she knew what happened, that I had been exploited by a pedophile. and that she wanted to talk to me about it more when I got off work that night. And I spent my entire rest of my day at school terrified. I spent my work shift terrified, having panic attacks at what was coming my way. And my mom really shocked me when she picked me up and she pulled me in the car. And the first thing she said to me was that she was sorry. And I asked her, like, what do you mean you're sorry? And she said, it's my job as your parent to protect you, and I failed you. And for that, I am so sorry that this happened to you and you didn't feel safe enough to come talk to me about it when it happened. And we just cried together in the car. And it was so shocking to me. I was so sure that out of both my parents, my mom was going to be the one who really got upset with me and disowned me. And her reaction, it was like realizing that I had been lied to for years, and that this person had really gotten into my head and made me believe my parents were my enemy when they weren't. They were there for me. My dad had a bit of a harder time dealing with what happened because it all happened at his house, so he carried a lot of guilt with him. He didn't really want to talk about it. He would shut down conversations about it. He just kind of wanted to try to start moving on from it, but it was just coming out for me. I had spent 4 years suppressing everything to now it was all out in the open for everyone to see. And the police ended up asking us to write victim statement letters to him. My parents each had to write one. My dad's was very violent. My mom's was just very sad. And my letter, I had a lot of satisfaction writing it because I got to tell him that I was alive and I was the reason he was there right now, that I did turn him in for what he was doing to me and other people. And I had said in the letter that if he thought for one instance I wasn't going to come down and testify against him, he had another thing coming, because now I was in control of what was going to happen to him. And the officers told me that after he read my letter, he put it down and he pled. He pled guilty to all the charges. When he was caught, I remember at first feeling very angry. I was angry that it took 2.5 years. I had been operating on the fact that he was either caught already or just something had happened to him. And that's why I hadn't heard anything else. And I was mad. I was mad that it took so long. And I was mad that these new systems had just started being implemented to protect kids on the internet. And I remember thinking to myself, well, where was this when this was happening to me? And I felt very sad. I felt very upset for his family, upset for anybody who was hurt by this situation, because I still blamed myself. I still told myself at that time that it was my fault. Court lasted about 1.5 years because his lawyer kept putting off the trial to try to give him as much time in detention as possible to count towards whatever sentence he ended up getting. I decided not to go to court and to just submit a victim impact statement so that I would never have to see him face to face, because there was this shield, this wall in place where I had never had to actually see him physically in person. And I wanted to keep that up as my barrier, my protection from what was going on. And it was in 2008 or 2009, he was sentenced to just under 20 years in jail. They didn't tell me specifics of how many other girls there were. I think I remember them telling me there was 3 to 5 others who were involved in the trial, but they had seized over 1,000 pictures of me on his computer. And so they had told me that I was one of the main staples of the case and why they needed my involvement in my statement to the court. And they did read it in court, and he apparently cried and said he was so sorry and he wanted to right his wrongs. But luckily the court did not take his sorries. They did sentence him to the full extent of the law, which was a pretty big deal because exploitation over the internet doesn't get that many years from what I've seen, but he was served for just under 20 years, which was an incredible sentence that we were not expecting. We did fight to try to send him to a state prison, but because of the nature of the case, he ended up in a low-max facility where he stayed for just until end of last year. He was there. where he's now, apparently according to the inmate lookup, in a halfway house preparing to enter back into society this July. I'm very scared of him getting out this year. I ended up changing my name 2 years ago in an attempt to make it so if he tried to look me up, that he would hit a brick wall. There are supposed to be provisions in place, they told me, where he'd always be under supervision. He's not allowed to contact me or anyone in my family, or he'll be sent back to jail. But I'm not in that country. I don't know if it's being enforced. So I'm constantly scared of what's going to happen when he gets out, if he is going to try to find me, if he is going to try to reach out and threaten me or get angry with me, if the picture still exists somewhere on a hard drive that the police couldn't get to. It wasn't until I started to realize that it wasn't my fault that I started to kind of heal from what happened, and realizing that, yes, I was the one who said yes that day, but I was 12 years old and he was 57. And a lot of people will often ask me, well, what were you thinking? Like, that's so silly. But it's like, why are we looking at that? Why are we looking at how a 57-year-old was asking a 12-year-old to do these things on the internet? And it wasn't until I saw a movie that explained that to me that this person knew exactly what to say, exactly how to groom me, exactly how to instill fear into me. And why was that my fault? Why was I still blaming myself for what happened when he was unfortunately older and smarter than I was at the time? It wasn't until I started allowing myself to feel the emotions that I went through that I started to really be able to let go of a lot of what happened. I ended up writing a letter to him that I never sent, just really letting everything out. And it was the first time in years I had allowed myself to actually cry about what happened and to actually feel the unjustified shame, the fear that I had felt, the anger that I felt, the sadness that I felt. And it started me on a path to be able to start to forgive myself for what happened. I will always be angry with him, but I have forgiven and chosen that forgiveness is the best way to go, because for a long time he occupied a lot of space in my head. I spent a lot of time and energy hating him and wishing just the absolute worst things for him while he was in prison. And I came to a realization one day that why was I letting him rent all this space in my mind, and that I didn't want him to continue to rule the next however many years I was going to let myself be a victim of my circumstances. And so I started to see myself as more of a survivor, and I started to seek out help with cognitive behavioral therapy, with dialectical behavioral therapy, learning skills to help me cope better with what had happened to me, because I had no distress tolerance skills. My emotions were completely out of control for a really long time because I hadn't allowed myself to feel them for a really long time. And it wasn't until 2017, when I got pregnant with my son, that I really put my healing into full speed. And I wanted to be the best person I could be for my son. And I wanted to advocate for other people who are going through the same things and who are afraid to talk to anybody about it because they feel so alone. Most people don't understand that it's very isolating when you're exploited, because you feel like you can't tell anybody. You believe everything that this person says, and it's your world, it consumes you. It's not your fault if something like this happens to you. When predators prey on people, they are the ones who are to blame. They are the ones who are the bad guys. People aren't bad guys for falling for things, for doing something that they thought was safe when it wasn't.